For the first part of this assignment, we created the grid on the original piece of artwork. We're now going to enlarge this. Just imagine if you were using a copy machine and you needed to enlarge a small image, you can actually dial up, zoom, 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 or enlarge, whatever is the terminology on the Xerox machine, and take the small image and blow it up in percentages, okay? We're going to do a similar activity here where we're going to take our image and blow it up to fit on our 11 by 17 paper. All right, so the problem with this is that 11 by 17 is not equal proportion to 8.5 by 11. That doesn't quite work. So our measurements are going to be a little bit different on the 11 by 17. But we can start with one measurement and use that for our grid measurement as we move on. So the easiest way to do this is go with the shorter of the two links. So we have 8.5, which is, if we want to look at that, would be 8.5. Okay, that's our number. We can take a measurement that we know is consistent here, which is the width, which is 11. All right, so we have 11, and we can divide that by 8.5. Okay, the way to do this, or you can do it the other way, so 8.5 into 11. What you end up with is 1.29-ish. Okay, so it's like 1.29. That's a very odd number. So since I'm in the 0.29, this is the tenths and the hundredths, I can make a minute adjustment since we're going in proportion and not in an actual dimension. So I'm going to change this to 1.25. This is the same as 1 1/4. Okay, so where our grid on this one is 1 inch by 1 inch to make this square, we're going to go and enlarge this to make something that fits onto our 11 by 17. And the measurement we have is going to be 1 1/4 by 1 1/4 inch. Okay, so the first thing we know, the easiest one, is we're going to start from the same side that we did on this one. We're going to start from our right side, and we're going to make our way across to create all of our vertical lines. All right, so let's start with that. I'm going to do everything with a pencil because I want to be able to erase this. One thing I want you to get in the habit of is, as you're drawing lines, draw them very lightly, very light. Just drag the pencil. Don't hammer down and draw a big dark line. Why? Because I cannot erase this. It becomes very difficult to erase. Where erasing these light lines becomes a lot easier. So try to get in the habit of just laying the pencil on the edge and just lightly dragging it so you get a very light line. That's very important. The same thing goes whenever you're drawing a lot of these other lines, to try to go lightly. Now mind, you will be drawing this multiple times. You will be sometimes losing lines because of the paint, and will need to redraw certain lines back in to bring them back up. It's best to start with a light line and work up than to have a dark line and then constantly trying to paint over it. Okay, so let's start with that. We're going to use our same ruler, regular ruler, and this time we said 1.25. That's 1 1/4. So if we look on our measurement, this would be 1 inch from here to here. And the first long line is a quarter, 1/4, 1/4 of this. So here's a quarter, here's a quarter, here's a quarter, and here's a quarter. 4 quarters equals a whole. So that's the first mark is a quarter. All right. So I'm going to lay this on this side. I'm going to come to about just shy from the top, and I'm going to measure over 1 1/4. And you can do it either way. You can either go ahead and just move, if it's easier for you, move 1 1/4 and just go off the neck. Just double check your measurement though, right? You double check that you don't mess up your measurement. All right, so there's 1.25 inches, 1.25 inches. If you get off a little bit, let's say I went here and I went to 1.5 inches, that's going to throw off my measurement all the way down. So we make sure this is 1.25 inches. And you'll see I'll have a little extra at the end, just the same as we had an extra here, but it's in proportion. All right, so once you have those all the way across, you're going to do the same thing on the bottom section of this. So come down to the bottom. We do a little crooked since this projector is kind of weird. So I'm going to 1.25 inches, come in from the same side, 1.25 inches, 1.25 inches, 1.25 inches. Just keep making your way all the way across, 1.25 inches. An 1.25 inches. Okay, and just like before, once you have your 2 dots, you use any form of a straight edge. I'm going to use this one here, and you want to connect the dots. All right, so I'm going to make my way up. I'm going to put this down. I got a dot here and a dot here, and I'm going to very lightly, remember, very lightly, just kind of drag it over and make your way up. So every line, very light. Reason is we don't want that grid to be there later. If this was a backdrop that I was painting on a paint frame or on the floor, I might be using, instead of lines, I might be taping cloth string, making nails along the edges and drawing the string between it so that I have a grid that's made out of string and not on the actual fabric. So I can remove the string after I'm finished painting and I won't have that grid anymore. The grid was only there for a guide while I was painting. In this case, we're going to use this on the paper, and that's okay. See, I'm making my way up very lightly, drawing these lines. So get my last one. Okay, you can see I kind of did it horizontally. That's just more fluid from the way I draw my lines. You can see now, it's kind of hard to see if I tilt, it's kind of bright. If I tilt this, you might see it better. You can see I've made all my vertical lines all the way across, and they're all 1 1/4 inch apart. This is in proportion to the 1 inch ones that are on this. So as I build up, I'll be able to transfer very easily. Okay, so we know this is 11 by 17. So we're going to do the same process we did in the other one. We're going to find the center and build out upon the center. So what's half of 17? 8.5. 8.5 plus 8.5 is going to be 17. So I'm going to take my ruler here. I'm going to put the 0 at the top. I'm going to measure down to 8.5. Remember 8.5, that's the center between 8 and 9. I'm going to double check my measurement. Just a tad off. And then I'm going to come to the other side. Again, put my 0 at the edge, come into 8.5, make a line. And now I can connect the dots very lightly. Okay. Once you've found the center, I'll angle it up, you'll kind of see it better. Once you've found the center, you can now use this to create all of the horizontal lines moving up and down in order to create the 1.25 by 1.25 grid. So if we look back at this, we've got an 1.25. Now, what I recommend is, so that we don't mess up, go ahead and take your a Sharpie or a pen like I'm doing, and just right where measure over 1 1/4 of an inch and make yourself a little mark. You see this? So this reminds me that I have to go to this mark every time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start on the center line. Let's see if I zoom up a little bit. I have my center line here. I'm going to come to the lower section of the drawing. And I'm going to make my way across this direction, going 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/4. You see how I'm doing this? All these are 1 1/4 inch. Okay. So once you have this direction, go the other direction. Start with the center, 1 1/4 inch. It's very easy to make a mistake. So I really recommend make a little mark or a tick here right where that quarter is, because you could go 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/2 and the next thing you know, all of your marks are off. So that way it keeps you on 1 1/4 inch, which is our square grid. Okay, so I'm doing 1 1/4 inch. Okay, so I've done all those. Now I'm going to go to the top portion of this page. I'm going to do the same thing. 1 1/4 inch. 1 1/4 inch. Okay, and then start from the center again and go to the left 1 1/4 inch. Again, go very lightly with your marks. Anything you put down, in this case, this is all guides. This is all to guide your drawing, to keep from distorting. And so don't go heavy, don't go real dark marks because they're very difficult to erase later. Okay, once you have gone both directions, you can then start taking your ruler and line up the dots. I start at the center and make one way and then flip it to the other side. So I'm going to line up those dots and then very lightly drag my pencil without making a dark line. Move up to the next one. Next one. Very lightly. If you've made that little tick mark on your ruler, then you shouldn't have a problem with your measurement. So if you want to quickly take a measurement, go this direction. All right, well, that's 1 1/4 inch. Just a random square. That's 1 1/4 inch. That's perfect. It lined up great. So now I'm going to go down the other side. Very lightly, draw my lines. Lines. You start looking at one and it looks like it's a crooked, little bit crooked. You probably measured one of the two little tick marks wrong. I think everything's looking okay here. Now, if you're an artist and you like to do artwork and you do samples and stuff and want to enlarge, you can also twist your paintings by using a standard grid on your original artwork and then a shaped grid on your final artwork and be able to change the look of it. So, all right, let me creep this up. So you can kind of see now that I have a nice grid that is equidistant. They're all horizontal 1 1/4 inch and tall 1 1/4 inch, each one.